Welcome to the cryptozoology show. We're going to have some more mystery cats, and I have an update of the most. I've mentioned this creature before, what I believe to be the world's smallest dragon, and he because he was landlocked on the island in Jamaica and surrounding regions. There's a few similar like stories. Um, some early explorers, random books, and of early explorers to the natives there all mentioned that there's this small dragon that's about 3, 4 feet long. He has a crest on his head and he screeches at you, right? And that, but he's like a snake, right? And that sort of thing like that. Well, son of a gun, I met this a Jamaican fellow a few months back, sort of thing like that. And instantly we just got along. And I had a Jamaican buddy like this in the 70s that I used to hang out with. And so we bonded like in 5 minutes, right? So we hang out, we go fishing and do different things, right? And I asked him about that. And not only does he confirm that they exist, but that he actually saw a photograph. So he's trying to find this for me. And so when he's talking to his relatives and that, like that, they're going to see if they can find this for me. And so I actually have a picture of one of these guys proving that they're real, right? Like, and so because I saw these ancient sort of mentions of these different explorers, and each guy doesn't know each other, and they all telling you exactly what the snake does. He's got a crest on his head, some kind of like dewlap like thing, almost like a dragon. Every the description is the same as what you would find in an Asian type of legless dragon, right? But that they would be way bigger, right? But because this guy was landlocked on the island, right, and that he's not very big, right? So the thing is that this guy actually saw a photograph of it, of this thing, and I know this man to be extremely honest, extremely so. Right? He has a very higher end sort of job. He's got every kind of thing. He's got a real decent family, and this guy's kept his word with me on every single thing, everything. So I know in my every belief in my, I would never believe that this man's lying to me. He's that decent, right? So this dragon really is real. So all these years I've been dreaming of this to finally find somebody that actually, you know what I mean, like where I could and this guy's seen a photograph, so he's going to try and find it. So I'll be the first person ever to put a photograph out there of one of these things, right? So that'd be really cool update. And I had mentioned before many times. About the Muskrat Lake Monster film that was seen by millions of people and that sort of thing like that. I found a place that actually does this, but lately I've been helping out different ones and all kinds of stuff and recovering, and I just not the time to do this, but eventually in the new year somewhere I'll get that video, yeah, out, and then people can re-see it again, right? Because it's impossible to see it any other way, sort of thing like that. But anyways, this guy, I'm telling you, man, is like legitimate stuff here. And this man right away said, "Oh yeah, I've seen one of them before." He said he saw a photograph of it, right? What some relative or somebody. He's got like a giant family down there, right? Like, and they're all like families are different in those kinds of regions, right? They're closer and than a lot of us North American ones there, where everybody's fighting, right, and that sort of thing. So, anyways, this guy's like a stellar human being, and every way, shape, or form. I like him better than 99.99% of people I've ever met in my life. Right? So I am sure that this guy's telling me the truth, right? So that, and, but the thing is that, so if he can find this, he saw it a couple years ago, right? And he doesn't remember if he still has it somewhere on an older phone or that whatever, but he saw it somewhere, right? When he was, this photograph of it, and they were saying they got one of these killed one of these dragon snakes, right? So the thing is that I think it was I can't remember if it was Captain Cook. It was one of the big explorer guys there, he even mentions it, right? And this thing will screech at you, right? So very similar to ancient descriptions of other dragons that would do similar like sort of behavior, right? And the same this crest on their head, right? Totally different from any other kind of snake and that sort of thing like that. So whatever it is at the end of the day, I mean, if this guy wants to claim as some kind of thing, it's still something like that could have been much bigger in other areas that would cause what you'd call one of the dragons out there, right? Oh, and this is the wildest thing. I was with this lady that's doing some stuff for me, and we were in this downtown, this insane place called the Rito, where a lot of people call it the Greedo Center, right? Everything's overpriced, right? But you can see anything from Justin and Katy Perry and her brother, sort of thing, hanging out there, and to Fred the crackhead, right? So it's everything from models to winos and everything. And we were going along, and all of a sudden, this insane fellow was screaming and waving and stuff like that, and he was super furry, right? And that sort of thing like that. And then we went into the elevator, and it stunk so bad that it was beyond insane, right? Like, I mean, I have never smelled a stench. So that poor model girl, she wasn't exaggerating. So I believe that this guy is the alalness monster because about 2 days after, uh, we decided to go do some filming along this waterway, right? And this crazy guy, he was there the same night, and the guy was washing his clothing in our canal system, right? I forgot to mention this last show, right? So the guy was there, he was standing there, and he was pretty furry dude, man, and he's taller and very insane looking, right? So he didn't say anything, so I never, sadly, didn't get to hear this aloe stuff, but he does have some wacky red thing on his head, but I don't really think it's a turban. So this guy may have nothing to do with this halal stuff at all, after all, right? He just wears like some kind of, like a bandana like thing on his head, right? So maybe when the other people saw him coming out of the filthy auto river, swimming in there with all that foam, right? It covered it up and made it look more like that. But seeing it there fairly clearly, the guy stinks like unbelievable. Like I've never smelled a stench like this, man. It was almost near the wild man of McQueen, right? Like, I mean, the elevator still reeked when we went back in it about a half an hour later, right? I mean, it was terrible, right? So I mean, almost like that Seinfeld episode where you couldn't get rid of the thing. So I think the aloneness monster is actually just some vagrant, insane guy that likes swimming and washing his clothes in the river and probably doesn't have the greatest bathroom etiquette, right? And this wrap thing on his head, I don't believe, like it could be a torn up turban, but I mean, it looked to me more like, some guy wrapped like a scarf around his head, like, and wrapped up and everything. So that I'm like, I mean, he at least matches all this stuff. He's definitely furry. This guy's almost on the hypertrichosis state, right? He's gruesome and tall looking. He certainly stinks like unbelievable in the near Sasquatch range, right? Right. And he's wacky looking, right, and everything. So the only thing that I missed out on is he wasn't screaming this alu babu or whatever, right? so so I'm hoping we see him again and he does this, then for sure we can confirm that this is the aloneness monster, right? So anyways, as far as as far as I'm concerned, I think the aloneness monster's been roughly solved here. That he's just some insane vagrant that hangs out around Rita Street and swims in the Ottawa River and washes his clothes in there and things like that, right? so anyways, yeah, I've been out there. I forgot many times I wanted to mention this story. I met this family And two of their neighbors, all of these people claimed in the later 70s to mid 80s range that there was these giant killer gators in the Nation River, right? So we'll talk about that. Totally, like there was this. I read what years ago there was. I can't remember if it was in Maclean's, but it was in some weird magazine or something, and they had this picture of this little alligator, and they claimed that it was caught in the Ottawa River, right? And a few stories of the monsters that you got had a weird gatory head that could have been an alligator, right? But 99.99% of them are not like that, except the Nation River flows into the Ottawa River, and that and it's more muddy and dark because it's got a clay foundation and things like that. And so it's its own separate entity in some ways, right? However, anything can go back and forth into it, right? And so, it's one of these things. But I mean, in general, the Ottawa River monster has been like a monster kind unknown to science, is these giant serpentine sort that the guy goes up and down, like I showed you in one of the films there. And early reports, these farmers would find giant tracks in the spring and fall that the monster seemingly would leave in the winter, right? And that go into some hibernation somewhere or whatever, right? But some kind of snake-like creature, right? And then apparently locals actually caught the thing and it killed it, right? That's one of the stories. But stories after that continued on, right? And things I've seen in there, like I've probably seen this different odd anomalies and more than any other human being out there. And some people I was with, because I bring them quite often fishing with me, and that many times that these people were with me also, right? Where the other people was with me on the boat and that sort of thing like that. So it was very interesting, anyways. But we'll talk about that sort of thing like that, and some films like I've told you this for years, right? Everything from a guy attacked in a beach around Lake Erie by a giant shark to all kinds of stuff that's out there, Black River, everything. I'll show you some recent stuff here that's interesting, right? So again, people shouldn't be swimming in major river systems. It's iffy. Yeah, some of these vanishings that people think that the guy just drowned, he may have been, something else might have happened to him, right? And that sort of thing like that. We're going to talk about the chemical plants correlation and a group of hobo sasquatch. That's an interesting story. I mentioned it a little bit before one time, but I'll go in a little bit more in-depth detail to it. And some early UFOs were the mini sort, like where I showed you on the last show of the little leprechauness like lady that was in a spaceship, right? So anyways, we have a bunch of different topics to cover this one. I still have more mystical items and different things we'll do on some other shows. I'll catch up to some of these sort of things. But because I talked to a real witness of my and I'm recovering this sort of thing like this. So this is one of my few chances here, when you're older, right? I mean, if I could get a photograph of this dude and then some Forrest Gallon guy at least then could look at it and say, hey, that looks pretty convincing, then maybe this thing can finally be discovered. Yeah, call it something Dracos, right? Like I mean, because it really is a miniature dragon that is left on an island. It matches the description of dragons, but a bigger sizes. That's all right. So it's a family of these things, right? So and that's one of his nicknames, the Jamaican Dragon, right? So, anyways, this guy actually really saw this, right? So as far as I'm concerned now, 1 billion% this creature exists, right? And in recent times, this guy saw this, right? So that's astonishing, right? Like so. Anyway, very interesting, and we got some, tidbits of that. Oh, there was something that I wanted to mention. I can't. Oh my goodness, man. Oh yeah, I was talking about in the last show that there was this two, the Uran guy and the ape man of Morocco, right? The reason that lady survived and was in the cave, she was held captive there, and then she had the kid and then somehow escaped, right? Remember, it's Morocco. So it's like a warm climate, right? And that, but I mean, a vast majority of these sort of things are in regions where probably the gringo girl isn't, going to do well here, right? So again, it's feasible that maybe sometimes they can keep them alive until the time of birth, but maybe because these children are bigger freaks, right, and stuff like that, that maybe sometimes the girl dies, or maybe even after, like, let's say the Bigfoot guy comes out, who knows, maybe then they don't see her, like, or maybe they keep her for another one or whatever, right? Like I these things, it's hard to know, right? But I mean, the amount of, like I said, these captures, right? Like I covered that guy that was thrown in this cave and he escaped. What was it, Mount Morris or something or whatever, right? Like in North Carolina, I think it was, or South Carolina, and this guy was thrown in there by one of these Sasquatch, right? And the guy wiggled his way through some crack. Like, I mean, there's so many of these that even males the same thing, right? So I mean, I don't know, what did this guy want to eat him, or whatever, or something else, right? Like, I mean, I suppose, right, if they're wild humans, they could anyway, okay, well, we'll just move on here. I can't handle it. Like, I mean, I'm still freaked out by that poor guy. That, can you imagine walking with your workers and all you're doing is checking fence lines, minding your own business, and this hairy ape man or lady or something grabbed him, that, and flung him up and ripped off all his clothes and dragged him away. Like, I mean, holy mackerel, man, there's some scary stuff going on out there. But anyways, we'll continue on here. Some new evidence here is our leaders controlled by space aliens, and a lot of the decisions lately, it makes you wonder here. And so here you can see this real simulated pic of a former leader who could be an AI robot, as far as we know, and a space alien making deals. You can see right there. I'd say that looks pretty a lot like him. And so here's they deciphered what, by watching the creature's lips and stuff, what was really going on. They were able to translate it. Junkie. I'll trade you a barrel of that 50, the big 50, right? So that's what this AI True Glow here was saying. And 500 pounds of Jean-Guy pot for the ray gun that can make anyone my loveless slave. That sounds like a fun sort of gun there. Does it work on celebs like Kay Perry and Bally Boys too, as well as the Loop de Gurus and the Sasquatch? And the creature answered him back, Goonie Goo Gaga. Translation, that meant yes. And so the Trudeau AI here said, okay, it's a Drag La La. so so this explains all this weirdness here with the Katy Perry thing going on, and that he has one of these ray guns that he got from the aliens. This is hilarious. Whoever drew this, great stuff. That's like absolutely fantastic. But the guy looks like some kind of little alien, right? Maybe it was based on reality. Maybe somebody was watching him do this. But pretty funny, anyways. Okay, so we'll move on here. But you couldn't pass this up. This is great stuff. I just love this. The whole thing of it, that's fantastic. I could see him there after he's had a few big reapers, all of a sudden having a conversation with a space alien. So I'd believe it. I wanted to talk something that happened to me that now I can verify these stories. I read about these stories even in the 60s, 70s. There was I think, like, even that book that I had mentioned before from Reader's Digest, which I still say is one of the greatest books that I've ever seen in my entire life, across the board, had the most bizarre information and strange tales, right? Like that's where I first learned of the Beast of Jobadin and different ones, right? Like I mean, so I became possessed by like this book was just absolutely fantastic. It was red leather, and it's this titanic conglomeration of insane sort of things, right? And I'm pretty sure that this book, or at least a few around there, because I'd read this and other things too, right? That crows and ravens will return you gifts and things like that, and somehow they know it's you, and this sort of thing like that. Well, I had lost this very precious to be dragon ring, right? And it's just absolutely really cool looking. It's like a traditional mega sort of looking sort of sea, yeah, you know, river monster sort of idea, those sorts, right? And that in ancient Asian sort of style to it, right? And so I looked for months with this. I even looked with a metal detector looking around. I couldn't find this thing. None of the neighbors, nobody knew where it was or whatever, or like this and that sort of thing like that. And it was really cold out in the winter and stuff like that. And I'd see these poor crows, and they're always hanging around. So I started feeling sorry for them. A lot of times I had extra bread and stuff where I ran now out of sandwich meat or whatever it is I'm going to make. So I would just start feeding them, right? And the odd time, if it was warm out, even a squirrel would come, or the odd wayward, insane seagull that's nuts enough to stay out when it's cold like this, right? So some of them are crazy where they stay around like they don't really seemingly leave far, right? You'll see them right out in the middle of winter, right? Like how their poor feet can stand all this stuff. I got to research that one day, how it is that a lot of these birds, their feet don't fall off, or even Bigfoot amazes me, like sort of thing. Right? But whatever the case, right? There was this one nervy boss crow, and this dude way bigger than the other ones, like I'd say like another 50%. So I'm not sure if it's a female or male, whatever, right? Like they don't come close enough to you, even if you could figure that out. Like, I don't know, birds are weird, right? Like, you know, some you can tell, right? Like a wood duck. I mean, the female's bland and the guy's got this big cry. Like, so certain ones you can tell easily, but other ones, I'm not an ornithologist. I'm a fish expert, right? But I know a lot of birds, though, right? Including the one that I have on my other show that's still never been identified as seemingly some kind of crossbreed of a duck and a swan, possibly, or a duck and a goose. But it's, I mean, this thing was insanely huge. Like his feet was bigger than an average size big duck. That's just his foot. So he was like the Sasquatch of ducks, right? Or whatever this creature was. He was sure duck like. He had feet like a duck that was orange and a little bit of black up in the front. Pure white, except for this patch that I remember seeing somewhere on him. And that, and a similar like bird was photographed, and nobody's been able to identify it either. The same suggestions that possibly, but I mean, this guy came and landed right in front of me, and he said, "Quack quack, hello," right? He started going away, right, and that sort of thing. But anyways, in this one storm, I left the stuff out for them as I usually do, and I went back in, and I came back maybe about an hour later. I was going to go out and get a coffee and stuff, and even though it was snowing and everything, and that, and I love my coffee, and so that sort of thing like that. So I come out and I see the footprints where he usually comes on the railing. This big monster, right, and right there is my ring. Like right, he laid it exactly like just after he ate it. He somehow found this ring somehow and put it there. So I checked all the neighbors. Nobody returned this. They didn't see it. There is no other logical explanation. There was no other people's footprints around. I don't think any of the other neighbors went out that day much, like this was snowing, right? And, you know, sort of thing. So, I mean, what other thing could it be? And even now I'm out and they're back again. They seem to leave in the summer months. You don't see as much of them anyways, right? Or they don't seem to need to hang out, but they like these trees in my area that are more pineish and different ones. They can still hang out there and get cover and stuff like that, and I guess nestle together or whatever. And they tend to hang out here in the winter, right? So whenever I got spare whatever kind of stuff, some kinds of bread apparently isn't good for them and things like that. But usually I get this wheat stuff is just pure. It's not been processed or anything, right? So I mean, I give them what I can, right? So it's better than them being starved to death, sort of thing like that. But anyways, they see me and they start cawing, and they know somehow. So even though I haven't fed them in ages, right? Because they don't hang out here in the spring, summer, fall months, they seem to go away, right? So, I mean, what other choice is there? I've seen many interviews in the past. I think it was in that book about crows and ravens doing this sort of thing too, and that, and and I've seen both, and I mean, ravens are like so beautiful, man, and they're so big. Like, for some reason, even though they're this dark, creepy bird, I even have a funny plastic one that I got in the dollar store, and sometimes I'll put it on my shoulder just to see what they'll do, right? And they look and they'll keep cawing at it, right? Because he looks so close to them that, I mean, if I put this out in the grass across the street, nobody would not know that that wasn't a real crow. Like they actually do a really good job with it, right? So it's very entertaining, anyways, right? Like so. Anyways, I just thought it'd be funny to see what they would do, right? And so I put it up on my shoulder and I wrapped something around his feet so it wouldn't like tip over. And I talked to him, right, and then walk around with the bread. And some of them started coming closer to me and that sort of thing because the curiosity of that, right? But I mean, what other choice would you have, right? So these stories exist. So somehow these guys are so intelligent that just because we can't speak their language, we think they're stupid because they can't speak ours and understand us. That's silly, right? Like it's the same thing. We haven't a frigging clue what like kukaku means. Like there's theories, but like you can't prove it, a lot of this stuff, right? Like so you can tell like when a bird's upset, usually they start rhythmic, like way more of these calls, right, and things like that sort of thing, right, because they're calling out, I guess, to their kin or whatever, right, but that sort of thing. But I mean, in general, like I mean, a lot of this stuff, I mean, it could mean many things, right, like so. But somehow these guys are really intelligent, right, and I mean, even in the Bible, they've had the prophet there out in the desert and stuff like that. These they kept coming down and feeding them, right? I mean, that's wild stuff, man. Like, so these birds are really smart, man. Like way smarter than what we think, right? Like, and that sort of thing like that. So I just thought it was so interesting. Like, I'd heard these stories before, I read about them here and there, right? But I just, it's one of those things I didn't really. I thought maybe the people just think that, but really it's not really reality. Like somehow that the or the bird just happened to kick it around or whatever, right? Like, but I mean, this guy purposely put this exactly like everything. The only thing was his giant footprints or hers, whatever it is, and the railing of snow, no footprints besides mine leaving, right? So who like, I mean, what, a magic elf flew by and landed, right? Like, so I mean, there's no other, like, I didn't see him do it, but I mean, what other conclusion could you come to, right? I mean, nobody else did it, and I mean, so I think this is a miracle because I got my ring back, right? So I love it, right? So that sort of thing like that. This crazy, ever since I've been doing it this way on these kinds of things, every time you get a message or something that's annoying, it happens to come on when I'm doing these sort of things like that. But anyways, very interesting, right? Like so, I mean, you got to admit that that's, I mean, yeah, a pretty cool sort of thing, right? And I mean, they're barking at me already, right? It's this time of year again, but anyways, I'll take care of them as best as I can, right? Whenever I got something extra, and that my little buddies, and occasionally the odd squirrel comes out or a bunny rabbit or other strange creatures that'll come around here. I've seen everything from wild turkeys, a whole group of them, about 7 of them, a red fox, a coyotes. a group of them went ran in a pass. It kind of got scary. But anyways, I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff for a place that nobody would believe any of these things could exist, right? But there's little areas of forest all through the belt of this city, right? That has these pocket like populations of weird things that are in there that people don't realize, right? One of my favorite one I think is right on the Laurier Street Bridge, right? There is literally thousands of people per day that go up across this bridge, up and down. They do all this stuff, and there's a little French park. I can't remember the name of it the second, but anyways, it was created to. They have like French festivals there and stuff. I don't know. It's like it's a park named after some French person of some sort, right, or whatever, right? And right on the top of the bridge, right across the street from this place, the Rito Center, right? The There's this tiny little row bush that's so small it's only about maybe 3 feet wide and about 20 feet long, right? That's in this cement sort of thing. Nobody on earth would believe there's a giant family of bunny rabbits that have been living there for mass decades, right? And you only see them really early in the morning. They'll come out of there. They've been conditioned to not come out of the day at all, sort of thing like that because of all the traffic. And then once it's all nice and quiet at night, they hop out of this bush, they hop a few feet, and then they go down to this park. And I guess they eat garbage or whatever is around, right? Like little flowers and different things, right? And then they'll hop back in there and go in there. But thousands of people could go by there daily, and I've never seen these bunny rabbits. The only reason I have is from early morning fishing excursions or late night and this kind of thing, right? So, but the and I'm always looking for these kinds of things, right? I've just kind of like that. I like looking around, seeing what's going on, right? So, but I mean, very interesting, right? That you wouldn't believe that that be feasible, but it is, right? So things can hide amongst us that you could be looking right out straight in front of you and you not realize that it's there. And the same with these crows, and many of these creatures are probably way more smarter than what we think, right? They used to say swift as a fox and how cagey and smart foxes are and that sort of stuff like that. I see there's this wonderful one from Russia where this poor guy got his head stuck in a jar, right? And he was smart enough to know he comes out of the bush, he comes right to them and he kneels right in front of them and says, "Here, help me." And he was smart enough to know that a human could help him pull this off of his head. I mean, come on, man. There's this is why. So, do you not think a primitive man would be able to outfox us out in the woods easily? The guy's like 8, 10 times more powerful, right? And he can, traverse. They dig underground tunnels and hide. There's all kinds of stories from 1800s papers, even of the guy claiming that they never realized before looking around, right, that all of a sudden there's a hole in the ground there and it leads down to some kind of tunnels, right? And then all of a sudden, when they come back looking for it, there's a giant boulder there. So these guys have designed like stuff like that probably since these groups have ever been around. And because they are primitive human with some intelligence to them, right? They know to stay away from us, right? For some reason, right? Like, and that sort of thing like that. And that's why a Sasquatch like creatures can exist because they're very craftier in what we think. I mean, if a fox is smart enough to know to come and get humans' help, the guy, even when he took it out of his head, he went like this and he thanked them, like he nodded at them, one of the most bizarre stuff you ever see, right? And then the guy just goes away, right? Like, I mean, I've seen all kinds of wacky stuff like this, right? There was one, this poor, I think it was a raven or a blackbird, I can't remember. But, anyways, not a blackbird, a crow, that somehow got stuck in this oil, right? So this giant bear comes from out of nowhere, right? And he starts going along. And the guy was so ginger with him, he gets him up and like this, and he and puts him there and everything, and gets the oil off of him a little bit, and shoves him on his way. I mean, that's astonishing, astonishing, right? I mean, there is these guys have a much more intellect than what we believe, right? And that sort of thing like that. So very interesting. But I mean, certainly, if a crow somehow, I don't know how that they knew this ring belonged to me. I don't. I mean, these parts are mysterious. I've read like a lot of birds don't even smell well or can't really like not like we can sort of thing, right? They're uh, yeah, are different than ours, like and that sort of thing like that. And some of the garbage that they eat, that's fairly believable, right? And that sort of thing like that. But I mean, they got to be really way smarter than what we could possibly ever imagine. It's just simply we can't decode their language, and they until. But there has been crows I've seen and ravens that were taught like hundreds of words, right, like language, and would say a bunch of stuff, right, and that sort of thing like that. So and they somehow know what that means. Like, you want a cracker, you want this and that, and they have like so they could be taught to a certain degree, um, the language a little bit. But the problem is that they might understand what you're saying to them. Like if you say Polly wants a cracker or whatever, they're going to know they're going to get a cracker, right? And that sort of thing. But it could be that they'll what they're learning is like repetitive, like sort of thing where this guy still can't really translate to you what he wants or needs, right? Properly, like it to a certain degrees, right? I would find it harder on their end because they don't have the same human intellect in this sort of way where the person's already been trained from childhood to read and all these kinds of things. It's a bird, right? So it's not that it's not feasible to train them certain things. It's just that the understanding process and everything is slightly different, right? So but anyways, at the end of the day, I can personally now verify that that actually that these birds really can do this. So isn't that interesting? So what we'll continue on here. I covered this one here next, and we have that other one that were the vocals of the recording at the beginning remind me of that crazy Queon Quebec Bigfoot and that the whoops sound fairly high and powerful for a human. I mean, I suppose it could be done, but so yeah, I won't use that as like great proof that the film is legitimate and that sort of thing as that. But the crushing of the trees and things. Whatever it's doing, it is really like powerful, and so and that, but it's the beginning of the recording that is like very interesting, right? Like, I mean, it reminds me when the guy was in a bad mood, sometimes he made a similar like sound like that, right? So, I mean, I can't say for sure, but uh, this is more likely a real, authentic Sasquatch than not, let's say. Like, and a higher probability, way more so it's real than it's not because the beginning part is would be near impossible for a human to do some of the stuff. So the other two maybe, but they'd have to be really a big person with a big diaphragm and a lot of power in their lungs, right? So maybe, but I mean, I don't see why you would have something that couldn't be a person at the beginning and then mix in this. So all likely it really was like across the board, probably a real Sasquatch. So very interesting, another sort of one. But the other film we're going to cover, I won't even bother putting a slide in. And I also notice here again, as usual, this silly program, it was recording with an N, and you can see it's now IBG. but we're going to cover that this lady had a trail cam, and she picks up this insane Bigfoot that leaps around like Tarzan out of this tree and vanishes in like less than 3 seconds. This whole thing is so fast that you can't even notice this. Apparently, even the lady that put it up didn't even know. It was one of the viewers that noticed some little blurry thing in it and decided to slow it down and notice it. so, anyways, it's wild, but I can almost bet 99% sure that this is not a human in a suit because this guy seems to jump like I don't really know how tall the tree is, but it looks like he's jumping at least like 15, 20 feet down sort of stuff here. So the guy somehow is propelling himself all through grabbing on other tree branches and you see his whole hands go right like around it and stuff. It's a very interesting film. So we'll cover these ones next. So there's no way on earth that this. Look at the strength of that. You can hear it snapping right off. I mean, totally insane. This cannot be a human doing that. Not feasible. Wow, totally crazy, man. A very interesting film. I wanted to comment on this interesting film here. This lady put out some trail cam thing, and this bizarre Sasquatch, he actually jumps like really high up from a tree. A regular person, their legs would be not, not in good shape here, and that sort of thing. And we'll go through it here. Some guy analyzed this, and he froze some of the frames and stuff like that. But you'll see him on the ground there later, and how quick this is all done in 3 seconds. This is super slow mo stuff here. So, like, no human being could even maneuver. The guy is able to grab great big thick branches as they're coming down that a human's hands wouldn't grow around like properly. And this guy seemingly has his whole hands right around them, right? You can see him here now. He's kind of, and he uses different the branches and stuff to propel himself to the next sort of thing, right? And this guy's gone in a flash. Like, I mean, you see here, right? And now he's starting to run, sort of like that. And you see him, he vanishes into these trees in the background, all within like less than 3 seconds here. I mean, it's totally insane, right? So, I mean, it's very, very interesting sort of thing. And you can see him here. It's sad, it's hard to tell the length of his arms, but they seem pretty big. So they could be because the way the guy's doing things, he never lets them lax right down, right? And that sort of thing. To me, that's one of the key features when I'm looking at these things is the length of the arms and legs, right? Compared to average human beings that would be in a suit, and as well as things like this that I know is impossible pretty well for some Tarzan guy to in a monkey suit to be doing some of this stuff is not very likely, you know. But it's a very interesting film. He vanishes in this tree forest over here, and this is all like in micro. Oh, there you can see his arm is pretty long. There, it's big, right? So, but sadly, again, he's not like putting it all down where you would to get a good comparison to that. But I'm sure somebody could figure it out, like mathematically, what likely the length of his arm compared to some other parts on him, right? But I mean, this guy comes flying from this tree, like way up above. See here? So look at how fast that guy does that. No person's going to move. That's pretty darn fast, man. Look, did you see that? I mean, totally insane, right? So that guy in microseconds is like, flies from a 20 some feet up in the air out of a tree and does all this, super Tarzan like stuff. It's not happening. I think this is a legitimate film. I really do. Very interesting. Talk about two mini UFO ones. I might have mentioned these slightly on other shows, but not fully sort of thing here. But one of the strangest events that I didn't see the space alien or whatever, right? But this is the weirdest thing I have ever seen in my entire life. Nearly like right up there with the in the top, anyways, 10, right? Of strange things. Uh, we went to this trout lake in Quebec, right? And it's a beautiful. It's got like little brookies in it and rainbows and stuff like that. It's stocked by somebody or whatever, right? That sort of thing. And perch and the odd big pike that's in there too, and the odd other things. What else did we catch once? I think a ling or cod or something, right? Like that kind of stuff, like odd little kinds of species that are mixed in with them, right? But anyways, it started getting slow in there because it's a very small little lake. Like you can walk across it. It's really not a lake. It's like a more like a mini pond almost, right? Like, but they call it a little lac, right? Like but it's smaller than a lot of ponds out there, right? But anyway, so a fun little place, and it's an 1800s cabin, and we're all in there, and we started really pounding down the we didn't have internet back in those days, right? So there wasn't much to do in the evenings, right? So we were pounding down the Labatt Saigons and things like that, right? Not that particular brand, but different ones, right? So this one guy, and he had these insane brothers, and they were all funny characters, right? But this one guy, he says, give me beer. And we ran out of beer, right? So there was none left, right? So he kept going on and on about it, and he said, "F you guys," and blah blah blah, right? So he goes, opens the door, and it's this giant snowstorm and everything out there, and he's almost dressed in nothing, like in just this little lumber jacket thing and tiny shorts. And oh yeah, and he didn't have any shoes on, man, which was totally insane, right? Because they were all soaking wet. So he leaves. He just slams the door. So we kept thinking like every 30 seconds, minute, that he's gonna, come back in and that'll be the end of it. But now like 10, 20 minutes go by and this guy's still not there. And I started panicking, thinking, oh my God, man, he can actually breathe to death out there. So I said, come on, guys, we got to find him, right? Like, obviously he's not coming back. So we go and follow these tracks out in the snow, and they lead to the edge of the lake. And there was this weird circular sort of melted spot right like on the lake, right? So like, what? And then he's gone, right? Like, so we kept looking for him and calling his name everywhere, looking up at trees, thinking maybe we got so kazooed he decided to climb a tree. Like this guy would do anything, right? So you'd believe anything, right? So this kept going on and on and on. And he's still not there, right? So we freaked out, man. We started like panicking. So we said, okay, we'll get skidoos and we'll start searching everywhere, right? Like he's got to be someplace, right? And this sort of thing. So we'll go back in, get warmed up for a second, and get some other sort of better clothes for this sort of stuff, and get back out there and see if we can find this nut, right? So we're getting this ready, and all of a sudden, cragang like this guy comes back and he's got with him a quart of this beer that's from Germany. Okay? There's no cottages. There's nothing. There's no way on this freaking planet that this guy could have made it to anybody else's cottage. That's the only cottage on this lake. And the next lake is about maybe 5 miles away, right? And there's no possible way that this guy walked back and forth through this snowstorm barefooted like that, right? He's got now this court there, and he says, you guys are tools. He says that those flying guys, they were nice. They got me some beer. So I'm what, right? Like, so like our minds are like completely, this guy had a nice cold beer that wasn't solid frozen. You would think it would be out in that stuff, right? And where did he get this weird German beer? And not only that, it looked like old, like as if maybe this stuff was made a long time ago, right? But it was some kind of weird German writing on it and stuff like that, right? And it was a big quart of beer, right? And he claimed that he went to the lake, right, where we saw this thing, and this depression in the ice, right, that looked like something heated it up or melted water around it, right? It was very strange, but at the time I didn't think anything of this, right? But then he said that this guys in this flying thing got him, and then he kept telling them that all of his friends are a-holes because they won't give him any beer, and he thinks that they have some. So then these guys said, well, no problem, we can get you one. And then they somehow zapped him like this beer in his hand. Right? Like, so what? I'm like, what? I still to this date, this is because I saw the depression. This guy vanished for a long time. Like, not long enough that he could have made it to there and back. I know that much, anyways, right? Like, and then where would these people? Why would nobody around there? They're all like super Quebecois, sort of anti. They don't like a lot of sort of other groups. Let's say some of them, right? And then so you mind your p's and q's over there, right? In the province of Quebec, right? You don't ruffle any much feathers, right? And that sort of thing like that, because certain areas they're not the big fan of certain groups, right? So there's no way that this guy could have even made it that far in the length of time, because he was gone maybe a couple hours. So that would mean that he'd have to be able to walk 5 miles through a blizzard, bust into a cottage, somehow get a beer, and walk back barefoot without his feet freezing up and everything. So he claimed that they put him right back down. So we went out, and all of a sudden his footprints was in the same area, but now coming back. This is the wackiest thing I have ever in my entire life. I still have no explanation, but it even gets more insane. Okay. So the next day, after fishing so many hours and barely anything, a couple of perch, not even a trout or anything anymore, we decided that, well, we're here for one more day. Well, why don't we just drive around and see if there's some other lake to go to or anything like that, right? So we're going along, and we run across this lake called McGregor Lake, and I'd never heard of it before, never seen it. But right away when I was looking at it, we're driving along, and I said, "Hey guys, you see that giant point out there?" I said, "I bet you there's some monster pike and trout off of this thing. This looks to me like that kind of a lake, right?" And I said, "You see that bends of those reeds down there?" And I was telling them spots that I would fish at, and we're see if we can get out there somehow. So we keep driving. We go around this bend, and all of a sudden, there's hundreds of vehicles out there, right? Like there was over 500 contestants they had in 3 lakes. There's 2 other lakes that join us, so they had 3 lakes that you could fish, right? All of them in this contest for 2 days it was on. It's 2:45 roughly in the afternoon, near 3 o'clock, and this thing's ending at 4. And this guy says, he says, "Well, we have the big tournament, but you're going to have to pay to get out of the ice." And I said, "Can I join it?" The guy said, "Are you crazy? It's only like an hour, that sort of thing like that. By the time you get out and everything, you might have your lucky half an hour to fish." And I said, "Well, I said, I'm into it." I said, "I like challenges, right?" So anyways, that's how brazen that it was as an angler, right, at the time, right, that I was willing to fork out this cash and prove to these guys that I was with that I'd be able to still win this bloody thing. So right away, these guys got suspicious, so they checked the vehicle up and down. They came out with us, right? So I paid the entry fee. Nobody else did. They weren't allowed to fish. And I paid the entry fee in that. And this guy was selling minnows. And the only minnows we had were these big, deader ones, but not like monsters, good sized suckers that I would use for pike and big tournaments and stuff like that. So this guy, I asked him, I said, "Do you guys have any bait there bigger, right? And he says, "Oh yeah, that guy over there sells." So I ran as fast as I could. I got bought four of these giant monsters that were about like 12, 14 inches on them, and I went to that point that I'd seen, right? And I checked with a flasher, and this guy watched me do the whole thing, drill the holes. I said, right there's a drop up at the edge of this point there. It's going down. I said, I'll put one there. I'll put one at the edge of the sort of like on the higher section of it. The first, there was like two drops off of it, right? So there was like a secondary drop, but the first drop, I put one on there too, and then I put three in this cut bay that came off of it that I thought that bigger pike also would cruise into there right along the edges of these grass lines. So, but I got one about 5 pounds and still would have got me in fourth place or something like that. But then, not 10 minutes later, bang, the thing goes down like this. I battle this dude in. I go running into the thing. I won it. So we couldn't leave because these guys had it. It was a giant club, and you had to go to their dinner to accept the prizes and everything, right? So then when I got up, they said, which of the trois lake you caught? Because the guy announcer wasn't there at that point or whatever, right? And I said McGregor Lake, and they and all of them cheered up with these big courts and everything. That's the place to go, right? Including my buddies there that were also having some courts, right? So, but anyways, somehow I guess these space aliens blessed me there as well, right? Because that would be a world record probably. I did this in less than a half an hour, destroyed over 500 contestants in a 3-day contest, right? And I show up in the list. You know, like by the time we got out to the spot, the guys followed us, checked the vehicle, everything. That was like 20 minutes, right? So I only had like about 55 minutes to go, had to run to this guy, drill these holes, and just barely get it in time and run in and, to win this, right? So, anyways, but I mean, yeah, one of the wackiest sort of weekends I've ever seen in my entire life, right? Like, I mean, sort of thing, right? But I mean, absolutely, like, so what? Like, I still to this date have no explanation. Why did this guy's feet start again the other way when they weren't there before? Why was there this thing, depression out there? Why did this guy not freeze to death? Right? And how on earth did he get some ancient looking giant quart like thing of beer? I wasn't even sure it was a quart. It was so funny looking, the whole thing of it, right? I've never seen that around there. And I know that wherever he got this from, they didn't get it from any local characters, right? This is all, Laurentide Labatt's Saint country, right? Like, not that kind of stuff, right? Like, so they wouldn't carry that if hell froze over, right? Like, maybe nowadays there's a lot of unusual, like different groups that have moved in that, might ask for such things. But in general, they didn't, it was very low more selection, right? Back in the day, you had like, like and different ones like over in Ontario. Was and that's another one there that they liked a lot too. Labatt Blue, right? Labatt Blue, right? And that sort of thing like that. But I mean, anyways, one of the strangest experiences in the universe where that would probably, like I said, be a world record that somebody purposely, goes out and like, and these guys let me do it because they wanted more money for their club, right? And they didn't believe I'd have a chance in hell of actually winning, right? That sort of thing like that. But the other thing, I don't remember if this was in damn Quebec City or Montreal. Anyways, it was one of the two. This family actually watched, they were drinking their beers and having their Christmas stuff, right? And this crazy mini UFO went flying like over their window, was hovering there, and then it kind of shot over. So they said, "Oh my God, what was that?" And they got all curious. So they went up to the roof, and the roof has like those old ones where you would pop it open,
and then you climb out and you can walk up on the roof, right? Like that kind of way, right? That they had these older apartments back then, right? In these different places, right? So so the guy, the family, like all of them went, but really only the guy like was the main one that had his head out, and he popped out. And he sees this little sort of spaceship like further way down, like this, right? So they decided for fun just to see what would occur. They were scared and everything, so they shut the door quietly again. The father went back up there and left, I think, a beer or two. I don't remember if it was one or two beers, but anyways, he left at least one beer for them outside, and these aliens actually took it and flew off with it. So, I mean, these are two strange stories in the booze-a-thon sort of world, right? However, this family seemed to be quite serious about that. It's uh, I mean, it's an interesting case, right? And I showed you the miniature lady. We'll cover her on another episode and that sort of thing like that. But I'm telling you, this Thomas guy somehow survived at least roughly about an hour and a half to 2 hours, somewhere in there, out in a blizzard with no socks or shoes on. This little coat, and somehow, even though there's no cottages anywhere, about the closest one's about 5 miles away, right, on another little lake, right? How is it feasible that this guy, and where did this round depression in the ice and melted water all around it come from? And why did his footprints stop right there? And how did he get this beer? But he claims that these guys he went on there, he kept calling it some weird name, and I don't remember what he was mumbling about, right? Because he was so incoherent, right? But I mean, uh, it was some kind of ship or something that they took him aboard and got him beer somehow, and they put it like zapped it right in his hand somehow. So did they like I mean, I know it sounds insane, but and I can fully understand why people like think this. However, you have to wonder in your mind, how does a guy survive that long out there in bare feet? Where did he get this beer from? I mean, it was new but old. Like it looked like something you would have like in the 1800s, not in today's times, right? Like the glass and everything about it, right? So I mean, where did he get this? I never thought about it, but I should have taken that bottle from him once he finished it and kept it. I should have done that at the time, but I didn't, right? Like that. I mentioned on another show there about these ancient scepters, and some have found crystal quartz in them that they theorize could actually hold some kind of electrical charge, and somehow by you doing a certain thing, it would zap it out, right? And that's so. But anyways, there's many of these wacky cases where involvement of something to do with beer, right? So I mean, yeah, you could say they've had too many Labatt Cinquante, but again, how does a guy survive that length of time? I'm just asking you questions. Like, I'm not stating it was UFO, but in my mind, because I've seen things in the sky and I ran across this Men in Black phenomenon, that I'm more open to the possibility that actually he really was picked up by some little alien dudes because he said they were small. And that he said, like in his language, it's like a midget, like little guys. I don't remember what they call them there, but it's some kind of weird name in like Serbian like language, right? And that sort of thing. So, but I mean, absolutely one of the weirdest things I have ever seen, and how like that fishing contest was like the craziest thing ever, man. That was so cool, right? To do that in such a like, I never, I entered tournaments late a few where I didn't know there was one on, and they said they checked the boat and everything. They'd say, well, yeah, if you want to try it, but you only have like a half a day left. I still end up winning a lot of them, right? And that sort of thing like that. So I just, you know, uh, that sort of thing, but never like that. Where that's that's wild sort of stuff, right? So I wonder if the space aliens help me out there too, right? But I mean, somehow he got this beer. Somehow his feet did not get frostbite. They didn't even seem like bad. And I have no explanation for this. I mean, below zero, right? So you can read into it what you want, man. But I mean, you know, I've seen, like I said, a lot of strange things. I proved some of them. The Duck Nest Monster, you know, he's real. Right? So, I mean, there's things out there that we don't understand. And I just happen to attract this sort of stuff, right? So, and people that hang out with me do too. So, but anyways, like, what really, like, seriously, my mind's still so perplexed by this. I mean, the guy's footprint stopped right where this circular area was, and he was gone. Then there was no tracks going back then. Then all of a sudden, he comes in the door and he's got this giant weird looking cord of Nazi like beer, right? Like, I mean, come on, man. Like, seriously, like, where did he get this? There's nobody there. I guarantee you this. It's like a wilderness shit here, right? You can't drive in with a car. You have to go in with a skidoo, right? So, like, how did he do? And who were these guys that were midgets that gave him, this beer, right? Like, were they some flying midget trolls from Germany, right? Like, I mean, I have no idea, but I mean, whatever, something he saw, some little people that were flying a smaller, because this thing wasn't very wide. I'd say this depression was no more than about 75 feet, let's say, like across, like sort of thing, right? So I don't think it was that big of a ship. So whoever was flying it maybe doesn't need to be that big, right? But anyways, I mean, one of the weirdest sort of things I've ever seen, like, one of the strangest weekends ever in history, right? But I mean, I was very proud of the ice fishing tournament because I mean that I picked the spot from driving by to have and using an old flasher from the 60s, right? Still. So I mean, that's a pretty good achievement, I would say, in such a short period of time, beating over 500 contestants when they've been at it for 3 days, right? So I was proud of that. But anyway, so we'll continue on here. I'll be talking about these dragons next here, but this, fellow that's seen one of these, right? This is roughly what it looks like here. It's reported to live near ocean beaches where boulders are present, and this thing may just live underneath the boulders. I've seen this phenomena here. With that unknown mustela that was in the region, and that may or may not exist. I haven't seen a print or anything in years, so I don't know, but it was smaller than even Mustela nivalis, right? And the scientist was supposed to describe it. And some of these things sit on shelves for 50, 100 years, and somebody gets around to finally doing it, right? And this guy didn't even give any credit below zero when he had below zero to do with the discovery of it or anything, right? So, not very foresty gallant like that guy wouldn't do that, I would imagine, right? I would think he would try and give credit and things like that. But, anyways, this is basically what the creature looks like. The main feature that is of this snake is that he has this sort of, or she, or both, maybe like this is unknown, right? But they have this crest on his head, right? And his head is a little bit more snaky, like a dragony, like a little bit, right? Not as snaky as much, right? And that sort of thing like that. And in a few cases, some of the reports, it might have had something underneath his chin, right? So this matches these historic dragon sort of sightings here and that sort of thing like that, right? So, I mean, very interesting. Anyways, we'll show another time a Jamaican, the King Solomon Islands flying snake dragon that shoots out flamey breath, right? It's basically just all you got to envision is a snake in your head with more of a dragony face the same thing as small wings, right? And that sort of thing like that. And they're able to hurl themselves down. I presume they live in caves and stuff and that sort of thing. But anyways, this is what this fellow seen a picture of something like this, right? So if you happen to be a person watching this show in Jamaica or any of these sort of places, right, and you've seen this snake, right, we need to get him proven, right? Like the earliest explorers on the island mentioned it, right? And different ones over the time, but it's very little known, right? So, but anyways, I'm a big fan of it. I believe that it's an actual living version of a smaller dragon that was these kinds of creatures that were reported in many other places, right? And that sort of thing like that. So, anyways, we'll continue on. Next, there, I wanted to cover dragon like creatures. I'll do a series of this of modern reports, right? Which you couldn't find anybody more thrilled with this sort of idea, right? Like, but I mean, it's been so long that, but even in Africa and all over the place, there's still a few kinds here that are matching dragon like stuff, right? So we'll cover a few here that, even though it boggles the mind, they may actually, a few kinds of these still may exist. Uh, um, and especially, like I said, the Jamaican dragon, as well as the Solomon Islands flying snake dragon, I believe to be authentic. So those two for sure. The rest, I'm don't know. Not enough information to make a decision one way or the other. But anyways, we'll continue on. Next, there, I wanted to cover dragon-like creatures. I'll do a series of this of modern reports, right? Which you couldn't find anybody more thrilled with this sort of idea, right? Like, but I mean, it's been so long that, but even in Africa and all over the place, there's still a few kinds here that are matching dragon like stuff, right? So we'll cover a few here that, even though it boggles the mind, they may actually, a few kinds of these still may exist. Uh, um, and especially, like I said, the Jamaican dragon, as well as the Solomon Islands flying snake dragon, I believe to be authentic. So those two for sure. The rest, I'm don't know. Not enough information to make a decision one way or the other. But anyways, we'll continue on. I wanted to cover a little bit because I met this Jamaican fellow recent that actually saw a picture of one of these guys, right? And that sort of thing like that. I was going to cover some modern day sightings here of dragons that are still being seen around the world. Like, you couldn't find anybody more thrilled when met this couple that was on the Solomon Islands. They went there and they saw one of these things, verifying it to me, right? I cover it on another show, Living Dragons, right? And that sort of thing like that. But I mean, I met this Jamaican fellow and I asked him just right out, and he said, "Oh, yeah, like, because he doesn't know anything about like that. The scientist guy doesn't know that they exist. He doesn't care. Like, they know they exist, right? So this guy, like the earliest explorers there in that, in a few different accounts mentioned this guy, right? So I know this man to be extremely credible, and he's gonna try and he saw a photograph of one that was killed in recent times, right? And there was also a sighting around some beach with boulders where one of these things was stuck his head out and stuff in modern times too. So I've collected a couple here now, but he's going to get his relatives and family and show them the drawing. And then, because uh, he, one of them out there and he's got giant big families and stuff like that, they might be able to track this down as well. There's a few birds that are supposedly extinct or never proven, right? That also I'm going to get them. I'll do get them somehow with some drawings of them, a few of these kinds.
and then he can show it to them and see what happens, right? That sort of thing like that. So very interesting. But I believe that because explorers and different guys in their journals wrote this, the description's always the same. The guy's about 2 to 4 feet long. He has like a comb-like thing on his head, like a chicken or a rooster, like a rooster, right? And that sort of thing. And in a couple of accounts, he might have possibly had something under his chin, right? Like some kind of dewlap thing. So matching 100% an ancient description of one of the kinds of dragons, right? Legless dragon, right? So, and that sort of thing like that. So, very interesting. This guy saw a photograph of this thing. So, I mean, what more can you say, right? So, as far as I'm concerned, he exists, right? Like, I was sure of this anyways, right? Because of these but this is a guy that I personally know for sure is not like making up a big whopper or any of this sort of thing, right? Like, so very interesting. Another one here. This one thrills me to death of the ancient biblical flying dragon, a serpent. He's got small wings, he can fly. He's legless usually, and this sort of thing like that. I mean, there's other kinds like wyverns and all kinds of different stuff through European different areas, right? But this is the classical one in the Bible mentioned, right? And apparently, these things can get up to about 10 feet long. They're snake shaped, but they have like a more funny head, like more like a dragon's, right? And apparently they can spit like even foggish fire of some sort that looks like fiery, foggy stuff is coming out, right? And they got wings, and they'll fly down. They come out at night, and that sort of thing like that. So locals don't like walking around there at night, which you can't blame them, right? And that sort of thing like that. There was a couple that actually saw one of these things in the like an English regular couple sort of thing. And this guy flew right over the top of them, right, and that sort of thing like that. So, I mean, there's still these reports going on, right? So, I mean, King Solomon Islands is a very fascinating place, right? Solomon Islands, right? So, I mean, you got giants still reported living there, all kinds of other wacky stuff, right? Including possibly a relic population of thylacine that live on the island as well, and other kinds of strange cryptids, right? And that sort of thing like that. A giant. Pterodactyl like sort of creatures, and a few other wacky ones that are around there, including some ocean monsters and stuff like that, too, and these kinds of things, right? The next one there I wanted to cover, this one's, they call them the Awangi. That's one of his names, anyways. He's got a bunch of them, but anyways, he's from Papua New Guinea, and this giant lizard apparently hangs up in trees, right? And he'll wait for things, I guess, or whatever. And he flies down. He could be anywhere from 10 to apparently some kind are titanic monsters that are like 30, 40 feet long, right? So that's pretty scary, man. But some of the accounts claim that they'll even eat humans or whatever is available, right? Certain ideas. So, I mean, I know it's very, these stories are just random and very not that in depth, right? So sadly, there's not enough information to get, a full sort of synopsis on this sort of thing. But anyways, it sounds likely, and I mean, if any place on earth that such a thing could exist, right, would be there, right? Like, and that sort of thing like that. And I told you I met a guy from the Isle of Carawina, and he claims that the dragon lives there, a Tyrannosaurus Rex, like sort of ancient creature, right? There's another island off Australia, same thing, but the guy's smaller. He's about 10 feet, and he actually goes in villages and will grab somebody and run off with you. I mean, terrifying, like that lady we talked about in the last show in Alaska and that sort of thing, like gnomes, but instead these are like insane little dragony raptors of some sort, right? So another kind of dragonish like thing. But the one in the Solomon Islands is the most interesting because they mention this in the Bible, right? So I find that like I would love to go to this place more than almost any of the ones, right? That one in the Isle of Carawina, but only in a giant caged up thing that the Tyrannosaurus Rex monster, and we got giant
I don't know, knockout gas or something to get this dude, because if that thing started coming at you, you don't have a hope in hell, like, right? And there's this crazy WikiLeaks from that Assange guy there. I find him just magnificent. Anybody that would even do this is entertaining to me, right? So kudos to him. But he has a couple of bizarre cryptid like ones, right? And one of them was this cartographer in the 1940s was on the island of Kirwina. And this photograph is insane. There's no way, if it's real, that it really came from that era, then the creature was real. There's no ifs or buts about this. Like, nobody could do that good of a job in a special effects thing in those eras. I mean, this is like insanely. He gives you the creeps even looking at it, right? So if you've never seen it, if you check out the WikiLeaks sort of people, right? And type up I don't know, like living Tyrannosaurus Rex or something like that. It'll probably show up, right? And I mean, this photo is absolutely crazy, right? So but sadly, because it was leaked out from some government thing, right? Like, I mean, there's a certain point that now I can't backtrail enough here to verify is the negative showing the same thing or any of this stuff, right? But anyways, uh, whoever did this, they did the most magnificent job of a photograph that you could ever possibly imagine, right? Like, I mean, totally insane, right? So I can't believe that that guy even survived that, like like, I mean, so, wow. I mean, because it's fairly clear, right? Like that sort of thing, like that. So anyways, I'll leave it on the fence of that one. That But I did meet a guy that lives on the island, and he and they only have visitors there once a year. And he says that there's also this very rare striped dog and a tiny little dog. Oh yeah, somebody had commented something about the New Guyana singing dog. No, this is not the same guy. It's a smaller, even sort of thing, right? And then also one that's like a thylacine, just smaller, but he has similar like stripes, right? And he verifies that this giant lizard monster lives on the island, and nobody wants to mess with them, and so they stay away from their areas, and the monster seemingly stays in those kinds of areas where he likes it, right? So it's very like, I mean, I find this astonishing because this guy's so serious. He has to walk through the jungle and everything every day for massive, I think it was like 20, 25 miles or something, to like make it to even get them to school, right? So I mean, totally insane. That's dedication, good parent, right? Sort of thing like that. So I mean, absolutely fascinating. So over the next bunch of shows, I'll tell you a bunch of other modern day dragons that are still being seen in that, but there's hope out there. And I mean, I would love this more than anything in this universe. Even more fun than Joe Nichols with the leprechauns would be my ultimate thrill, is to prove that the Bible was telling you the truth, that dragons really existed, and all these ancient records. Like I said, I went through all kinds of Great Lakes shipping records and different ones, and seeing right there that these people, it has in their cargo, they got 4 dragons or they got this or that. I mean, and they're still being, we're going to cover this. There's a lot more sightings starting to come up again. And it could be with this modern technology as well as that. They were hunted near extinction in a lot of areas because of scientists and stuff wanting stuff, things and beliefs of all kinds of things, that if you had the magic dragon claw, all that kind of stuff, right? Well, these guys were starting to get into the point of where they might not be extinct, but there's so few that you're not going to much see them anymore, right? But in modern times, some of these Asian areas, some from South America, Africa, and different ones, are getting a bit more of these sightings of certain kinds of dragons. Some are a bit different than the typical kinds in a lot of ancient literature, but not but they're mentioned also as well in this ancient literature, similar like thing, but they're rarer sort of dragons. So seemingly some of the rare ones that were in the most, you know, wildest place out there and stuff like that, jungles, these kind of guys may possibly still exist, but for sure from this couple. I mean, if you saw the eyes on these people, it's enough to convince you that they saw something pretty creepy, right? So, anyways, as far as I'm concerned, I believe in this cryptid, like very much so. I know for sure that Jamaican dragon now really exists, right? After meeting this fellow in recent times. And I mean, so I'm totally stoked by this sort of stuff. I would love nothing better than to contact across the world and say, hi, Forrest Galunkus. I would get him to go do it. I like him better than I do the rest of them. So, you know, or there's a young lady that was getting her degree to do that. That's actually a daughter of some one of the Bigfoot shows that I get. These guys are like totally hardcore. You know, they got like, you know, almost machine guns with them, right? Like they want to blast Bigfoot sort of thing. But he has this daughter that's a scientist girl, and because she's into cryptozoology and she has her degree and everything like that, you know, then she'd be another one too that, or maybe just invite them both and they can, I don't know, cooperate right around. But anyways, you know, the thing is that these guys, probably all of these ones really actually exist, right? Like people think that these things are made up, right? But I mean, they're not. When you get consistent for hundreds, thousands of years, whatever, right? Like these kinds of things and these locals tell you about this stuff. There's reality to something to these things. It's not. I mean, there's a recent monkey there in the Tapanuli too, an orangutan like just a few years. I mean, here's a 5 foot plus creature. Well, they've been around, right? And he's not even trying to hide from people. He doesn't even know we exist, right? And that sort of thing like that. So if they got like a higher intellect and this apparently this like Solomon Islands dragons, they come out at night. So in the day, they apparently fly up in the mountains. So I presume they go into some kind of caves that nobody would go into. None of these locals or anybody would go near these things, right? So all of this is why some ancient thing like that could still survive until modern times, right? Well, it's because is such a far remote place that they weren't hunting the dragons down there every minute of the day, sort of thing, right? There was enough of them around in other places that they didn't need to do this, right? So if you add this all up, this is just a handful here, right? And that, and I'll maybe on another slide, I'll put it like a description of what they look like and that sort of thing like that. But anyways, I just wanted to cover slightly about this. This guy in Papua New Guinea sounds pretty scary. Can you imagine walking along and all of a sudden this 30-foot lizard monster drops upon you? Right? Not good. So, but anyways, I'm sure there's something to each one of these, right? Like, and especially this King Solomon Islands. That, and my Jamaican dragon buddy that I've dreamed of since a child. These two are the most thrilling to me, right? Like like because on Jamaica, because it's an isolated island and smaller, right? The creature, the dragon guy became smaller, locked on this sort of thing. Dragons were pretty well worldwide, right? Like, I mean, in every culture, you see this across the thing. And after floods and other sort of catastrophes and different weird things, some of these guys crawled out of their caves, they survived that and maybe warming temperatures through Europe and things like that. These guys started moving from Africa and different countries to in these sort of places, right? And we're able to make a niche and be able to handle it. Just like I said, alligators can seemingly take way colder weather than what we think, right? And because you're in small countries and there's only the odd one that would come over, right? Well, then the guy kills them eventually, right? And this sort of thing like that. And that so, but I mean, these are modern day versions. So I mean, especially the Jamaican and the King Solomon dragon. I mean, that's that is the coolest thing on the planet. I would love to go there, put find out like to have anybody ever seen one of these guys eating like besides trying to attack a person and shoot flames at you, what other things may they do, right? And that sort of thing like that. And you could put out trap cameras at night and wait in areas where these guys have seen it, put some bait out there, right? And wait for the action to come along. If you could get clear photos of one of these guys actually flying a flying snake, I mean, it still proves the story, whether Forrest Gallant later describes it as some kind of new species of snake, because dragons were like a snake. They were a serpent, right? But a different kind, right? And that sort of thing, their own distinct family, right? So, whatever at the end of the day these things end up being, it doesn't matter. It tells you the truth that the biblical and these other accounts from these early explorers, they were telling you the truth, right? So, I can guarantee you the Jamaican dragon actually exists, right? And this King Solomon one's, I'm almost 100% sure of that one, but more so even the Jamaican dragon, but I'm right up there. I have no problem with this Papua New Guinea. I've never met somebody that's actually seen this giant lizard. So this, yeah, but I know somebody that's seen a photograph of one of these Jamaican dragons. And I interviewed a couple that was in the Solomon Islands at one point, and that sort of thing like that. And so they're there. Right? So I mean, to me, like that would be the coolest thing on earth, that there actually really is still a flying dragon like they described in the biblical sort of text and ancient ones, right? So anyways, we'll continue on here. Welcome, folks, here back. We're going to talk about the little known killer gators or crocs of the Nation River. You'll never see this in any crypto book or anything, but this was a groups of families that lived along the area in the Nation River, and they were all like French sort of families, right? They would all live along this, and then I think it was not sure exactly what year in the 80s or early 90s or something that they had this landslide caused these families to move and they vacate their sort of like cottages and things like that. But I met this family, and this guy told me the wildest stuff. He would go out there in the morning, and there was these giant alligators or crocodiles. He wasn't sure which of the two. He didn't know the difference, and neither did any of the other ones. They kept saying the big crocodiles. Really? So I mean, it's one of the two, right? Sort of thing like that. And but these guys would see them sunning themselves in this area along the Nation River, right? Now this is kind of like. I don't know what the little town was. I can't remember. I haven't been up that way in a long time, but it's some French like little town, right? And the Nation River is pretty long, and it actually goes into, besides the Ottawa River, other ways it goes and meanders all the way down to, I think, like some other major rivers that it feeds into in other ways, right? Like that are runoffs of it and stuff. So it's a pretty big river, and it's still different to this date from the Ottawa River because of the clay. These zebra mussels can't take a hold proper to clear it up, right? So in there is much more darker water typically than what it is in a lot of the areas. There is some rocky sections though in the Nation that I noticed were cleared up, and they probably from zebra mussels or what have you, right? But also a lot in the 70s and 80s you got in Lake Poengamook ones that were crocodile alligator like, and there was all these sort of things, right? And that's sort of a thing, as well as in Blue Sea Lake a few of the reports were like that, right? But the main one, this different families, and then they showed me other families, and they all said this, that they saw that between, like, one guy was really drunk and said the things were 10 feet long, but it seemed that most of them was in between the 5 to 8 foot length there, right? So and I said, "Are you sure they're not like gar things like that?" And like half these people didn't know what a gar is, right? So I made drawings and stuff like that, just a basic idea, and tried to see if I had a picture of one laying around somewhere, right, and that sort of thing on me, sort of thing. But I didn't have. Any of this sort of stuff, right? Like to really give them. So the only thing I give them was a, but they all claim no, these things would crawl up on the shore sometimes, like and lay there and sun themselves. So that doesn't sound like a needle nose gar, right? Or some wayward alligator gar. A lot of people don't know that, but actually, even in Lake Ontario and the St. Lawrence River, there was early reports from the 1800s and early netting and that alligator gar were in, and also in Lake Champlain, possibly, right? And that sort of thing like that. There's a report from early explorer, right? And he was one of the first people ever report the Lake Champlain monster, right? And he mentioned that there was gar in there 9 feet long. That's a bit outrageous for like a needle nose gar, right? But so there might have been a relic population of alligator gar, right? That got in. Like there's been alligator gar caught really far north, right? Like there was a giant one I remember years ago that was in around Minnesota and some flowage right around there, right? One of the bigger river systems off of it, right? And this monster was caught, right? That was like near 300 pounds that pulled these people around for several hours and everything, right? I mean, that's way you wouldn't expect you would expect more one that size to be in the Texas region and like the warmer sort of climates, right? But at one time they were way more common, but they got hunted out in early times, right? And that sort of thing like that. But I suspect that some of the Lake Champlain early monster sightings were actually also giant relic alligator gar population of a very small amount, besides some of the stuff. There's a recent footage, actually two of them, that are extraordinary, proving that what the divers told me. This I had interviewed this guy that was diving around in Lake Champlain, and he was in this back thing, and he saw this monster thing mowing through like all these lily pads, and the guy like as if he was munching in there or eating something, right? And it made this giant track under the water. The guy followed, was all muddy and everything, and this thing vanished in a big shadow and went away, right? But I mean, this it creeped this guy right out. I mean, it was terrifying, the size and the width of this thing. Well, you actually see on this film this titanic circular stuff start going on that is no way is just a fish or two. This is like some huge thing that is like really big, right? That should not be living in this lake, right? And that sort of thing. And there's another one where you see this black, big, long body. And he's seemingly more up and down, so more like when I saw the Ogopogo sort of thing, right? So, I mean, there's certainly something to the Lake Champlain monster. I've covered him sometimes, but not like a massive amount, right? Because I don't the Lake Champlain monster is a lot of things, right? Like it is the Sandra Mancy photograph is very interesting, like extremely so. I'm suspicious though on the left hand side, it looks like there's a stump there. I mean, I'm a fisherman, right? So I'm used to looking in the water and what the shape of stumps are and stuff and that. And it really does look like that either wherever this creature, if it wasn't a extra weird anomaly here, that this creature must have went up on some kind of like more sandbank, like a shallower sort of area here where he got a rise, right? Some kind of sunken island or any kind of thing like that where there was a tree stump on it of some sort. Because you see the creature like he's bad at this bend, or she brontosaurus looking thing,
but you can see on the left hand side there's some kind of like stump like object there, right? So that's a bit weird. But I can't believe that that's like a strange tree. It doesn't look like and there's waves on in the photograph like proving that probably something was creating a commotion around it. Like, so it's for sure interesting, right? Like, I mean, I can't 100%. It's on the, but because Sandra Nancy seemed like a nice lady and witness and everything, I don't have a problem with it. Me personally, I'm more on the fence that it probably was one of these anomalies that live in the lake, right? That get in there, right? And that sort of thing like that. But also a giant gar in ancient times were some of the reports. There was also this strange fin like creature that was similar that a few of the witnesses saw that seems to be of a different sort of a thing here, right? That is different. Many of them were giant sturgeon that they were seeing that are in there, right? Because there's a lot of monsters in that lake, right? Giant sturgeon, right? So these kind of things combined kind of create that. But this Nation River one is a mystery to me because they said that these things were sometimes two. The other family just saw it in the water, but two of them claimed that they saw these guys like heads and some of their bodies sitting up like on the banks, right? And it's a wild place down there. I mean, I caught a muskie there years ago that was a real monster, eh? Like a 61-inch giant, and this thing was almost like an albino. It had the weirdest white color to it and gray, like with almost you could barely see the little dots on it or any kind of stuff, right? Like the little waves or anything, right? So I mean, there's monsters in there of all kinds of weird stuff, right? And it's so loaded full of logs, and there's monster catfish in there too, drum, and all kinds of other weird species will get in there, right? And but a lot of times people, these giant old dead logs that are down there and everything, the monsters get in there and it's all over, right? Like, it's a tree fest sunken down in some areas. Other parts of the nation is not like this, right? Some up towards more like the St. Lawrence River, it comes out that way, right? Well, then other fish from these areas, side creeks and stuff, get in there too. And up there, it's weird. Like you'll have these rockier sections, and then all of a sudden it'll be all like muddy. And then further, more inland, there's a part of the Nation River that's in these little towns around. What the hell's the name of that? Up towards Osgood and all those region, right? I can't think of this little town, but anyways, there's like there, it's all like different. It's dammed, right? So it's its own separate water entity, and there I notice it's clearer and rockier and that sort of thing, right? That so it's all like an interesting body of water, right? But you wonder. I mean, there's nobody living along this place anymore, and nobody goes in that Nation River much to fish in there. It's a strange. It's almost like a Rideau Canal was back ages ago, where it's this muddy, dark system loaded full of logs. The guy's going to snag his lure every 2 seconds, some areas, right? And it's there is a decent carp population in it too, and that sort of thing. But it's also dangerous because the banks can cave in, right? Really, in some of these areas, right? And that's so it's a weird place. So my question, to wonderment is that is these things still around because there was stories like this in just as a for instance in one place, but this is hundreds of them actually. But what we'll use as a for instance the Colorado River for several about 3 4 years, these people have been reported seeing this alligator monster in there and nobody believed it. This guy got it on film and it's right in the middle of winter, man. So these guys can survive like really cold stuff here, right? So it's feasible that that somehow that these guys found some kind of place to reside in the winter months that you could hibernate up into, like some sewer system around there or something, right? Because sewers go in there
and then they could just come back out when it's warmer, right? Like, or when there's water still open, right? Because in that Colorado River, it was all ice in a lot of areas and stuff, but it's fast open water where the guy was, and the guy was filming him, right? So he'd stay open where the open water is, right? But can you imagine that they can withstand that kind of thing? I mean, so scientists are wrong this way. That's why those stories were true. There's still people on the internet, they put this all the time, that that's an urban myth. It is not an urban myth. There was a whole book written about this manager guy that was head of the sewer departments. All kinds of people in lakes, even around there in New York. What's that park there? The big park in New York. There was a gator, a guy filmed in there. This has been going on for ages because a long time ago you could get a pet gator even at a fair, and this and for cheap. And these, once the thing got a bit big, these people would flush it down the toilet, and some of them would survive it, right? And they can survive this kind of stuff. They can take a lot of stuff. There was uh, one pulled out in Australia a few years back, and one previous about 10, 20 years before that. I think that was pulled out of Australian sewers, right? And that in New York City, in Canada, even, right? So this is like ones that actually they caught, like people caught these, right? I have the old newspaper articles of them. They're authentic. They're really, these guys can withstand this stuff. So the thing is that it could be that some nuts, like because especially in the 60s, 50s, and all these different eras, it was way more relaxed, right? So they would have these wacky things at fairs. Nobody's questioning or caring about it. Nobody thought about it much. And that a lot of people are nice like me. You wouldn't want to kill the poor little guy. So then some people probably thought, oh, well, I'll just put him down here and maybe somehow they can survive, right? And that sort of thing, so very interesting, right? But like, I mean, this has been occurring for like ages all over the place, right? Like, and like I told you in my show there about Australian lake monsters, as you can see here, old Big Crocky here, and he's doo doo, right? Like, I mean, these guys, man. There was one shot recent in the Murray River, 18 feet long. 18 feet. The guy's going to nail you like nothing, man. Like, terrifying. Little rivers that are way up in beautiful waterfalls, you'd think it'd be the most safest. It's all crystal clear. You can't see anything. People jump in there. They get the old crocodile Dundee monster comes out and nails them, right? So do not swim in Australian rivers. They're extremely dangerous, even ones really far away from the ocean or anything. These insane crocodiles and stuff, they go way up this stuff, right? So, I mean, a very interesting side subject there. I'm not going to cover all the stories in them, but there was a bunch of them, right? And this all happened until this landslide. And I don't remember what year that was, but anyways, in these 70s to in the 80s, like sort of thing at least, this was occurring, that these different, and maybe others out there, like I only interviewed three, and then they told me some other people, but I never got a chance to talk to them. So possible like four different family units saw these things. Another strange thing I'd seen up there that I've never seen around here or any other place I've been in Canada. So I just thought it was interesting, but they had gazillions of these tree frogs, and these guys would stick like right to the tree and jump around, right? Like, I don't know where they came from. I've never seen any around here, right? Like, so, but I mean, I guess in some parts of Ontario they must exist. At the time, I didn't know that. I thought those things lived out in the jungle somewhere, right? But these people had them. They were some kind of strange tree frog that would climb up trees, and they had a little sticky stuff on their feet, right? Real funny looking ones too. But I'm not sure. I'm sure there's all kinds of different kinds of tree frogs. I don't know that much about those ones, right? But I knew what they were, because I'd heard of them before and stuff like that, and that. But I mean, I just thought that was bizarre. Like, I mean, I never seen any around here. I mean, there could be, but I've just never seen one, right? And you would think all these ages you would have, right? So, but anyways, there's some very strange things out there that is interesting. Like, I interviewed a guy in the 60s. This guy saw in Lake Blue Sea Lake, right? He saw some kind of like alligator monster swimming, and he said the tail was going like side to side, like an alligator, right? The big crocodile, the alligator, the guy who had the big French accent and everything like that. And, he saw that in this bay in Blue Sea Lake, right, and that sort of thing like that. So, and there was many witnesses of the Poengamuk monster that described it like more like a crocodile or an alligator, right? However, one of the photographs that I saw, and I was there, I investigated, I asked around and things like that, and this bear, there was eight witnesses on the boat. I think it's pretty well solved to me that it's and not probably a lake sturgeon, although it could be, because there was stories even in the Ottawa River once this size. But anyways, this thing was a little bit longer than this guy's 25-foot pontoon boat. So I mean, that's way beyond the accepted of size of a lake sturgeon. But there's an actual real good photograph of it, and if you compare it to the island and just this little back part and his giant adipose fin and that sort of thing like that, this guy is a monster, a monster. And what's funny about it too is he has a funny color to him. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but Lake Poengamuk in the 1800s had one of the earliest railroads, right? And in ancient times, with the to feed the Asian workers, these cheapskates, right? What they would do is they would bring fish from, so like, let's say the railway goes all the way eventually out west, right? Whatever areas that they could catch fish in, they would put them in these giant milk jug like things, and drop them in new lakes as they went around. So my suspect is that somehow uh, some of these guys must have had a few white sturgeon that somehow got, put in these jugs, and they decided to chuck them into Lake Poengamuk along with other things, and maybe didn't even know what they were, whatever, right at the time. And this guy's an ancient old monster. So this was done in the later 1800s, I believe it was, somewhere in that sort of range. So this guy, because sturgeon can probably live like over 200 years sometimes, and that sort of thing in this sort of range, and maybe even feasibly longer, but at least like 100 and some years are guaranteed that they've lived that long, right? Some of them. So if you get a monster like that, right, like that, would be growing in a smaller lake where he has no competition. He can mow up everything moving, right? That could be these, because white sturgeon were there was Lake Washington, the stories for years of duck eating monsters there. I knew there was something to it, and I kept the stories going. And then finally, a giant white sturgeon died up on the shore somehow, right? Something happened to him, right? So proving that the stories had reality. Right? I mean, the dude was 12 foot long or something, right? That is a monster, right? People don't expect to see something 12 feet long going by their boat, right? Like, sort of thing. So very interesting sort of thing. So nobody knows about that. The Nation River alligator, right? There was one in an old story, like I mentioned, in the Ottawa River, and they actually had a picture of this little one that apparently was caught in the Ottawa River. But I mean, that was the only thing ever. I mean, almost none. A few stories are like this where the guy had more like a lizard's alligatory like head, but 99.99, like I said, percent of things that are seen in the Ottawa River are not of alligators or crocodile like things, except this one bizarre case in an offbeat river, the Nation River, right? So, but anyways, interesting topic. Just another strange cryptid out there that has some must have some kind of reality to it. I suspect some of this they might have mistaken like huge needle nose gar or some wayward alligator gar that got in there. But this crawling up on the bank doesn't sound like that at all, right? So, I mean, I even though I want to believe more likely it's just a giant needle-nosed gar they were seeing, maybe they really did were seeing some kind of alligators that got loose in there for a while. I mean, whether they're still alive or whatever, who knows, right? Like maybe the landslide changed things for them, or who knows. But anyways, just another interesting cryptid out there that boggles the mind sometimes. Some of these things, and it makes you wonder. Sort of like it's a wild world out there, a mystery, right? I mean, but if you saw this river, you'd believe anything could get in there, from sharks to Sasquatch. You swim around like it's a real creepy, like muddy, sort of swampy thing. And when you're fishing down there, I mean, the monster catfish. I caught so many catfish between like 20 to some like late 20 some pound range in there every time I'd go fishing there. Was insane, man. So there's some big monsters in there, bug kinds of stuff, and some were huge, like sturgeon, probably, or other things that would keep towing all your line. You could feel your line rubbing up all against all these like underwater stumps and shit like that. And finally, some of these guys would go. You'd lose them, eventually, or the hook would straighten out. But very entertaining place, anyways. But creepy though. A lot of places they have it condemned where they won't allow you like along to sort of like do any kind of fishing or something. So you have to bring the boat in odd areas that is hard to reach, a lot of them, and then get it in there. But if you do see the Nation River crocodiles, the killers, because that was one of the stories that got this going. The guy said that when he was down near the bank, right, he went down there and he saw one of them coming, and the thing tried to, like, as if he was going to attack at him, so he ran up the bank, right? And he says, so like the killer gators, he tried to get me, sort of thing, right? And so I mean, extremely entertaining to me, right? Like on my end, right? But I mean, I have no idea, but these guys all saw something that's strange, because if they were needle nose guard, they shouldn't be sitting way up on the bank like that. So there's something a bit out there about that, right? So the only other logical explanation is somebody let loose some pets. Somehow that these guys were got, and there's so much food and carp and suckers and everything to eat. I mean, I imagine a gator wouldn't have problem finding some food around there, birds and everything else, right? And all kinds of rats and like whatever, right? Sort of stuff. So I mean, anything be moving in there. So my only question is the Nation River pretty well freezes in a vast majority of places in the winter, except there is some strange areas that are open, right? Little things here and there, right? And where they get way more faster current and that sort of thing that doesn't almost never freezes over, right? So, I mean, I suppose it's feasible, like this Colorado monster, that this guy is out right in the middle of winter, right? So who knows, right? Like, but or that they found some kind of den or something that they could live in, like once it gets cold, right? Or yeah, like some sewer nearby or something weird, right? Well, whatever the case, I don't really know, but it'd be interesting to know if anybody's still ever seen them. But I mean, very few people go fishing there. It's hard area, like I said, to reach in a lot of the different sections of it, and is also non-lure friendly, right? It's Snagbill City of 10 zillion old logs and stuff that's in there, right? And God knows what else. But anyways, we'll continue on here. But just another interesting rare cryptid out there that very few have ever heard of. So stay tuned. As I mentioned in other shows, there that many species of sharks can go up major rivers to creeks and may be responsible for some missing people over the ages. Right, there's been a lot of mysterious vanishings in small creeks and rivers where they never find the body or anything like that. It's quite feasible that actually occasionally a wayward shark has gotten up it, and sadly somebody like the Matawan Creek incident, as a for instance, and different ones. Now, even though that was brackish, a lot of these. you know, there was a great white that was seen by a bunch of people, and this guy was like about 25 miles up the river, all in pure fresh water, swimming around doing his thing, right? Uh, Everything from a whale shark to a basking shark, different things over the ages, right? So the scientists are completely wrong about this. I think when these tests were done, it's either that they're stressing the creature out, it doesn't give them long enough to modify it or to blend in or whatever, or just the environment or different things. There's some reasons. But I suspect what's happened over the ages that a lot of species just might have happened to have been born more in a brackish like environment and a bit more tolerant to it, and eventually sort of they get acclimated to it, right, and that sort of thing like that. But anyways, over the ages, from sometimes over several thousand miles from the nearest ocean, right, over 80 species has been caught and witnessed in fresh water. So I wish they'd stop kind of lying about this. Like, I mean, I think it's they just don't want the calls, right? And so if you just blame it, oh, it must be a bull shark, then it gets rid of the problem, right? Like there's not as much panic. 99% of them don't even know what a bull shark is, right? So I mean, it just gets rid of the problem, right? Like sort of thing. But because nobody wants to know that a giant great white or a tiger shark or a whaler shark or whatever, right? Some wacky species is out there, right? Eating up somebody in the local river or stream, right? But I mean, especially in Australian waters, you get all kinds of stuff like this besides bull sharks, other species that also will go way up these rivers and things like that. But anyways, I'll show you a recent film, just one of, like I said, and certainly this is not a bull shark. It's a bit blurry, so it's hard to tell which one 100% for sure that it is. There's not but for sure by the length of his nose and some of the other things, he cannot be a bull shark, anyways, right? So it's just another sort of interesting thing there, that the amount of different kinds that is out there, right? That is appeared in freshwater environments. People, like I said, if you're in major rivers, you probably shouldn't be swimming. So, anyways, we'll show you that next. Hey, folks, look at this. This is not a bull shark, and he's way up the river here. So, like I told you, I don't see how anybody could dispute this. Next show, there'll be more about dragons, Sasquatch sightings, more mystery cats, uh, a bunch of other sort of weird little things mixed in. One of these shows soon will be a couple of bizarre UFO crash to landing cases that are really interesting and that sort of thing like that. Um, a few lake monsters and some other sort of things like that. But anyways, and more mystical items in the future. I got so many different ones I want to cover, right? That are very interesting, right? But anyways, you got to admit some of those films that are a bit out there. And more evidence is compiling here that, I mean, people are going to have to start facing the truth that there really is a lot of animals out there unknown to science. It's not that shocking at all. What's bizarre about scientists that I find really strange, that many creatures discovered yearly, even the native people don't know much about it, or might but never have seen it, or just rarely seen it, right? But most of the time, they already know about it and tell them about this, and this is how they discover them. But why the skepticism when people tell you that they're seeing these things, right? Like my buddy the Magnusok in Madagascar. That's 100% a legitimate, real animal, just as much as any, a cougar or anything else, man. It's absolutely. hundreds of years of mentions by different ones. They're cagey. Donkeys, jackasses, all those kind of guys are hard to catch, man. It's a forest donkey, right? And that sort of thing like that. But I believe I'd be able to get this dude, right? And because I think also that they sense danger and things like that. And certainly with me, they being none, I would make sure that this guy was let go after, because I'd be concerned that how many is there until you could make an evaluation? Could you have a couple as a breeding, right? And that sort of thing like that. But anyways, for sure they exist. There's also one in Argentina. The guy's only like about a foot to 2 foot tall, and that sort of thing like that. That's still there's even a mystery elephant in Asia that's microscopic that you can fit your hand, right? Like some kind of micro versions, right? We'll cover them in another show, and all kinds of strange things that are out there. So, what's strange to me is that in some years it's hundreds, even thousands, depending on where it is, right? That if they happen to be a bunch of scientists like in the Antarctic or things like that, quite often they discover piles of new life every second, because now they're getting better equipment. They can put it down there and things like that and see this stuff, right? So, why the silly skepticism when the people keep telling you the same description and everything? I mean, you have to be logical about it. Not every time a person's going to be able to make up the exact same features and everything. In today's time, it's much easier because even a child could be, watch a Bigfoot show or two and all of a sudden have a good idea what one looks like, and could tell you a whopper, right? But in ancient times this didn't occur, and because it's hundreds of years and thousands of years depending on the area of the exact same kinds of descriptions, that is not a meme like that one character there that embarrassed himself. Like I said, I still find that the silliest thing. They actually paid this guy and to make a fool out of himself. I mean, he went in the room and his idea was is to prove Bigfoot isn't real, when completely proved the opposite, right? Like, because he tried to say that the first person, you tell them a story, the next, by the end of the time, the first guy saw Bigfoot and he was a hippie and he smoked crack, right? And then at the end of it, the Bigfoot, he's a naturalist. He's and he smokes pot or whatever, right? Like they would have these variations, right? And that, but you don't find this with Sasquatch for thousands of years in all kinds of cultures. The guy's always got long arms and old paintings, drawings. The ones I told you where they attacked this castle because they were mad that there was a unicorn hunt. And apparently they killed one, and these guys got peeved off at this and threw boulders at this castle for about 2 or 3 days, right? And I mean, you see this painting, and it's insane. And this guy ran back to report. They had artists then, like I said in other shows, right? And there's this artwork from the War of Roses, and it completely shows the guy riding a unicorn, man. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And even the armor is built around the unicorn's horns so that it fits on it and that. I mean, it's astonishing, right? Why would some guy in the 14th century that's a battle artist that has to run to that take an extra, all this time to make fake unicorn things, and how the guy's got his even thing on it, like the guarding the masts and everything for it, right? I mean, Alexander the Great coins completely a unicorn. It's not a rhino, right? Like, so these guys are silly. They irritate me, right? They did exist, absolutely, and so did dragons, right? And may still do, right? But at least the traditional European dragon lasted up until the 1800s somewhere, right? And that sort of was about the last little hold of these dudes, right? But these still countries will cover that. Some of them still have sightings, and who knows, right? But anyways, we'll continue on with this in the next show.